Welcome to HardTech, Canada's premier hardware and semiconductor event. Here to kick off the two-day conference, please join me in welcoming Venture Lab President and CEO, Melissa Chi.
Good morning and welcome to Canada's premier hardware and semiconductor event, HardTech. We have 2 exciting days in front of us and it's all starting right now. My name is Melissa Chi and I am the President and CEO of Venture Lab, a leading global founder community for hardware technology and enterprise software companies in Canada, and home to the Hardware Catalyst Initiative, Canada's only lab and incubator for hardware and semiconductor-focused companies. As virtual participants, we are coming together today from many different places. We acknowledge that the Venture Lab office operates on and that we walk upon the traditional territories of the Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the original keepers of this land, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee. We recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We are grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources, and we are committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. We are delighted to bring you this virtual conference despite the ongoing uncertainty of COVID-19. Although the last year has deeply affected all of us, there are still some things that remain true. Connections matter, whether that is virtual or face-to-face. And where there is no uncertainty, there is no innovation and growth. At Venture Lab, our mission is to grow globally competitive tech titans that build to scale in Canada for global markets. Our organization is led by seasoned entrepreneurs and business leaders with decades of industry experience in building IP-rich companies and commercializing transformational products on a global scale from Canada. We know that for Canada to continue to be a global leader, that more Canadian founders and their companies must be born global, inclusive by design, and built to scale. Our work at Venture Lab has enabled thousands of tech companies to scale through our growth-oriented initiatives focused on raising capital, attracting and retaining talent, commercializing technology and IP, and customer acquisition. Our portfolio of companies has created over 4,000 jobs, and our top companies that we have engaged with generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue each year and have raised over $200 million in investment capital to continue their growth and scale. We have a great conference planned for you over the next 2 days. Today's main stage agenda features visionary discussions around hardware and entrepreneurship, both of which are critically important for Canada and around the world right now. I hope that the speakers elicit thought-provoking and inspirational discussions for each of you. You have also been given the opportunity to choose a breakout session centered around the intersection of hardware and healthcare, automotive, and agriculture. I hope you join these breakout sessions with an open mind and are prepared to raise questions. As you know, the hardware and semiconductor industry is not one to be overlooked. The global semiconductor market is part of a $7 trillion market that creates close to 5 indirect new jobs for every 1 semi-job and enables the development of pioneering technologies for IP-rich tech companies. We're excited to see this next generation of Canadian-led and headquartered companies that are anchors not just for Canada, but for the global economy. I hope to see you back here tomorrow for our dynamic live HardTech pitch competition, where 8 finalists will battle it out in front of you, our audience, and our incredible judges from industry-leading companies. The HardTech pitch competition was open to companies developing hardware and semiconductor-focused products. The top 3 companies will be awarded a combined total of $50,000 in cash and in-kind prizing and serve as an application to the coveted 3rd cohort of Venture Lab's Hardware Catalyst Initiative. While the judges deliberate, 3 of our founders from the Hardware Catalyst Initiative will showcase their groundbreaking products and discuss their individual journeys. I encourage you to ask questions, engage in the live chat, and provide your feedback. These tools are here to bring our ecosystem together and make this an interactive and immersive conference experience. This conference would not be possible without the support of our HardTech partners, Dell, AMD, Siemens, Microsoft, the City of Markham, the City of Vaughan, in the regional municipality of York. I encourage you all to visit the exhibitor hall and meet our event partners. And now, without further ado, I am honored to introduce our moderator for the next 2 days, Manjula Selvaraja. Manjula is a Toronto-based journalist, technology and education columnist to the CBC's 20-plus radio stations across the country and a guest host on CBC's Ontario shows. She holds an engineering degree from Queen's University and was vice president of marketing at a now acquired Toronto startup. Manjula, thank you for being here. We look forward to having you lead these discussions and ask thought-provoking questions over the next 2 days.
Thank you, Melissa. I am really excited to be here and your moderator for the next 2 days. I should add, by the way, that this is now, as of this morning, a sold out conference, which tells you something. I mean, this is virtual. Venture Lab, your team, congratulations. It's not very often that it happens. And I think it speaks to the real need for people for, listening to thought leadership, listening to innovators, policymakers, and also networking with each other. So, kudos to this year's event and for years to come. Now, before we bring our first set of panelists to the virtual stage, I'd like to do some housekeeping. FeedLoop, the platform you're currently on, supports over 10 languages and allows each of you to adjust your settings to meet your own individual requirements. You can customize your experience and use the buttons at the top right of your screen. Underneath those buttons is the public session chat box. Feel free to share your thoughts. And if you have a question when we get to the Q&A portion of our discussions, certainly pop it in there. I'd love to put those questions to our panel. We ask that media outlets indicate your network and name when asking questions. Now, you've probably noticed the multiple tabs in the navigation bar on the left side of the screen. By clicking these tabs, you can view the lobby and conference announcements, the sessions that we're having, the speakers. You can visit the exhibitor hall, and you can also search for attendees to network with and participate in group discussions. Now, here's something kind of neat for all of the readers on the group. We'll be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card at the end of each day to one lucky winner who responds to one of our general surveys. These surveys really help the organization curate everything that it does, and they'll pop up on your screen prior to a session ending. I will announce that daily winner at 2:30, so be sure to submit your response to be entered into the contest. Now it's time for our first panel of the conference, a thought-provoking discussion with a group of leaders on the evolution of hardware technology. As technology becomes more intelligent, the demand for chips that power our devices continues to surge. You've heard of this, you've read it in the papers. Manufacturers around the world are sounding alarms about a global chip shortage and its impact on consumer electronics and automotive production. Let's talk about the evolution of hardware and semiconductor technology, that crisis today, and where we go from here. Our panelists are the Honorable Mary Ng, Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. Good morning.
Morning.
So glad to have you here, Minister. Jamie Dinsmore is the Vice President and Country Manager of Siemens Digital Industry Software and is responsible for leading the Canadian Software Organization. Good morning, Jamie.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
And Kevin O'Neill is responsible for AMD's global intellectual property and licensing programs and AMD Canada's government and university relationships. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Manjula.
I'm so delighted to have all of you here. Minister Ng, I'm going to start with you because, all the tough questions usually come to you first. We're sitting here at a hardware and semiconductor conference. Why is the federal government interested in this particular sector right now?
Well, Manjula, it's terrific to be here with you and with Kevin and Jamie. I'm so excited for this conversation. I think that it's not a surprise to my panelists, colleagues here, that hardware technology and semiconductors really are crucial to global industry. And if you think of it from a citizen's perspective, a regular Canadian, whether it's your smartphone or your automobile or a medical device like a hearing aid or consumer products like a dishwasher, future, I mean, hardware and chips really are foundational, and they're just found in so many of the devices that we are using every day. It's part of our lives now, and it's certainly that will be true into the future as well. So these are really sort of the building blocks of, they're the building blocks and the future blocks, if you will, of technologies for today and for tomorrow. And our government has certainly seen the opportunity to build this ecosystem. Here in Canada, we are here in the York region and in Markham. AMD and Siemens are certainly, I mean, both of my colleagues who are here on the panel are not strangers to this region or to Canada as multinational companies. But here we are with an incredible number of entrepreneurs and companies that really are innovating and developing the capability. We're here as part of the Catalyst, the Hardware Catalyst Initiative, to which our government has been an investor in. And what is this really sort of about? I'm the Minister for Small Business and Export Promotion and International Trade. So I like to sort of colloquially say my job is to help Canadian innovators, entrepreneurs, and businesses start up, scale up, and access new markets. So this sector is incredibly important because you just heard me talk about how relevant semiconductors and hardware play in each of our lives. And Venture Lab as well sits as part of the Advanced Manufacturing Supercluster, something else that our government invested and created. And here you're seeing partnerships between, the research through research institutions like in our post-secondary, together with small enterprises and entrepreneurs, but also with multinational, with the large corporations, and together collaborating to find those very technological solutions. So, it's important to Canada because this is capitalizing on a strength that we already have. And parallel to this, of course, Canada also has some real strengths in our natural resources. And here, what I'm talking about is raw minerals and critical minerals, which Canada is able to and will harness. And this is important because it contributes to the value chain or the inputs into the semiconductors or into that hardware. So it's what you need to sort of build it. So we see Canada as being having a strength here. We see it as important to our economy. We see it as important to the growth and development of our entrepreneurs. We see it as important to contributing to the global value chain and supply chain. Certainly, COVID-19 has demonstrated to us and to many around the world about how fragile supply chains can be. And this and in this space, it's no different. So it gives Canada an opportunity to be sure that we are conditioned to be a part of this. To be a part of this growth, not only domestically, but in the international marketplace. So we think that we have the human capital in our talent. We've got terrific research and development. We've got some excellent entrepreneurs and innovative small companies. And we certainly are not a stranger to the terrific multinationals that are here. Canada is a country that is safe and secure and reliable. So all of the conditions are here for us to be nurturing and helping our Canadian entrepreneurs be a part of this very important, the very important global economy to which both hardware and semiconductors really feature and is a part of.
Thank you, Minister. And Jamie, you just heard that. You heard the Minister talk about the foundation, the building blocks. It's interesting because as a mainstream sort of consumer, we see the end products and the end experiences, and we don't understand how much is behind that till you hear about the fragility. So let's step back into history for a bit. I'm curious, what would you say were one or two of the most profound, maybe celebrated turning points in this industry?
Great. So thank you very much, Manjula, for having us. Minister Ng, great introduction. Kevin, thrilled to be on the panel with you. It's tough to boil it down to one. There's been major advancements in a number of different industries that have really contributed to where we find ourselves today. Advancements like the telephone, electric light bulbs, getting into automobiles, and as Newton, coined, on the shoulders of giants, we're able to achieve major technology advancements. the biggest milestone event, not to sound trite, especially since we're talking hardware and semiconductors, really, in my opinion, took place in 1937 with the introduction of the computer. And where we found ourselves as a society is within a couple decades being able to actually go from the Orville brothers in flight to actually space travel. And it's rather remarkable. But from a personal perspective, it actually goes one step further. And the turning point for me was I was also at Queen's University, Manjula, for engineering. And I remember in '92 being exposed for the first time to the information superhighway, as they called it, World Wide Web, and getting my first email address. So that for me was a watershed moment and really was the beginning of this digital age that we find ourselves in now.
How would you say that the hardware and semiconductor technology has changed in the last 50 years?
Well, there's been quite an exponential curve in growth. And it goes back to, I think, Gordon E. Moore, who was working for Intel at the time, during an interview, proclaimed that they could see semiconductor, and computing power doubling every 2 years. And that's more or less been accepted and pervasive as we find ourselves today. And, it's really remarkable to me because I remember my first personal computer was a Commodore 64, and the 64 was a 64 kilobyte memory computer with, I literally had an external tape drive, which was 100 kilobytes. And to put that in perspective, the average email is 75 kilobytes. So, the need for memory and the need for storage, semiconductors and hardware is really remarkably grown. And the biggest users today of semiconductors are smartphones. And, quite honestly, many of us take for granted the fact that we literally have the capacity of a supercomputer, a Cray supercomputer from the 80s in our hands. And, it's not a tens of millions of dollars device, it's a disposable device. That's really how we're using it today. But the adoption of electronics, of software is eating the world, really facilitates the growth and need for additional hardware and semiconductor computing power. As Minister Ng already said, with regards to automobiles, home appliances, my iRobot lets me know that it's running low on battery, or my washing machine is done, or my fridge is letting me know I need more milk. So it really is remarkable to see where we find ourselves today. And I just see this with AI, machine learning, IoT, continuing to grow, in marching towards, ubiquitous computing, pervasive computing everywhere.
Jamie, I had one of those Commodores too, and I treasured it. I think it's gone now, but maybe valuable something these days. Kevin, let's talk about the current scenario. Paint the current landscape for me. Where are we now? What has hardware and semiconductors evolved to now?
Sure. Thanks, Manjula and Minister Ng and Jamie. It's great to be here. And thanks to Melissa and Venture Labs for putting on this conference. So I can't speak about the last 50 years, but I can speak about the last 30 years. And my career is really emblematic of where things have, how things have changed and how things have progressed within the semiconductor industry. So I started as a co-op engineer with IBM Manufacturing at Don Mills in Eglinton, and we made power supplies and memory modules for personal computers and for their mainframes. And over the last 30 years, what you've seen is this monolithic industry of integrated device manufacturers. Those have changed. You've seen a lot of separation, from a companies that develop everything themselves and manufacture everything themselves to individual companies focusing on an area like Siemens. They focus in on EDA tools. There's fabless semiconductor companies. There's pure play foundries, and so the industry has developed from a monolithic industry into one that is highly segmented and separated.
I mean, Minister Ng, I think Kevin's kind of painted that landscape now, and this is going to come up. It already has. You've brought it up, the global chip shortage. It's incredible that we only focus in on understanding the fragility of a system when something like this hits the news. And meanwhile, there are people in the industry who can sometimes say, hey, these are some of the gaps. What opportunities or concerns does the federal government have about this issue?
Well, it's a really important question, and thank you to both Jamie and Kevin for their insights. And Jamie, I had one of those Commodore 64s too, so it sort of, I think it's dating all of us. It was sort of one of those coveted gifts that we were all begging our parents to get us at that time. So so there you go. But boy, when I think about that versus what we're able to do, and we're doing this right now on my laptop, here at home, and in this context of a global pandemic, our ability to be able to work together is remarkable. But as I said earlier, and others have pointed out, examining the fragility and the fragility of this supply chain around around chips has certainly caught the eye of everyone, including Canada. But the way I would sort of look at this is, I would look at how we turn this, or look at it from an opportunity standpoint, understanding the opportunity to be able to build more resiliency is where we are and where we would like to be. Canada, as I said earlier, we're positioned in a really good way. And when I think about the work that I do with with our trading partners, and how we all are facing these challenges together, it really is very much about how does Canada collaborate, and how do we be a part of that solution, the domestic solution, but also a global solution. Canada and US, for example, I mean, we have in our Canada-US roadmap for economic recovery, in this, we've also made a commitment to tackle climate change. And in that, the more advanced ability for both of our countries to introduce, products and technologies and solutions that will help us deal with climate change on the one hand, but also enable our economic growth together, but also help us continue to work on the integration of our supply chains as we have over decades. I mean, this is a very unique relationship and a special relationship. Our supply chains are incredibly integrated. If you look at an automobile, it crosses the border 7 times, and today we are looking at that close collaboration and that integration that necessarily will include advanced manufacturing. It will include semiconductors. It will include hardware. It will include the inputs into those devices. So I think that this is a real opportunity and to provide the kinds of solutions. And I think those solutions are very much about collaborating with our international partners. And I think around the supply chain resiliency, particularly in this sector for semiconductors and for hardware, we certainly have an opportunity to be doing that with with our partner to the south, our neighbor, because we are aligned in terms of what we want to be accomplishing together in the fight against climate change and in the economic growth that this opportunity presents coming out of COVID-19, and this sector certainly can contribute to it. And then back local again to the York region and to Venture Lab, the terrific entrepreneurs and companies that are coming out of this space, along with those across the country, is really what we are very focused at supporting, so that we can support this growth, we can support this innovation, and be a part of the global solutions.
Thank you, Minister. Kevin, Jamie, perhaps we'll get into this shortage a little bit more, but first, can one of you explain how we got here with regards to the shortage?
I don't know.
I'll take that first.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
So I don't think it's a single factor, Manjula. There have been certainly the pandemic couldn't help but affect the industry, and it affected different portions of the industry very differently. So we saw at the beginning of the pandemic there was a lot of concern over how this is going to affect people's behaviors, and we saw a massive shift to work from home and school from home. We saw in the auto industry, they certainly furloughed a number of manufacturing plants because there was a lot of uncertainty. But there have been other things, that have affected us as well. There's been differing demands by individuals as their behaviors change now that they were at home a lot more. There were, physical events, whether it be fires or power supplies or climate activities that certainly affected, the ability to manufacture, some components. And as Minister Ng mentioned, it's a very integrated supply chain, and disruptions in one area, affect other parts of the industry. So you may not be able to, get the phone that you wanted, or the vehicle that you wanted, because of these ripples through the supply chain. So I don't think there was, a single thing that resulted in where we are today. I think it was a confluence of factors.
I'm curious, where do you think consumers are going to see it the most, the average consumer? Jamie?
Yeah, it'll be, to Kevin's point, we're already feeling it with regards to automobiles. That void that was created by predicting what the requirements would be was quickly filled by, webcams and Chromebooks and all the other components that were taking advantage of those, let's say, capacity availability. We're going to feel it, I think, pretty much across everything. I mean, I read this morning that Apple is still, going through, let's say, a staged delivery of their new phones, and we feel it pretty much everywhere. I mean, I read a report from Goldman Sachs that said COVID and the semiconductor shortage has affected 169 industries. Yeah. Which just made my head scratch. I mean, there's some industries in there that you just don't think of as being high tech, necessarily with regards to cement and, manufacturing and distribution as it relates to that. There's others that we're very obviously aligned with, but I think we're going to feel it pretty much across everything in terms of, access and quick availability, because as my daughter says, I'm not a diva. I just want what I want when I want it. And people are pretty used to getting that today, but there's only a finite number of semiconductor fabricators. And so we're just going to have to live to learn with, a staggered rollout of a number of our smart devices.
And I think this is the issue when it comes to foundational products. This is the thing. People sometimes are not completely aware that they're tied into so many industries till we hit an issue of this kind. Jamie, how do you think we'll get out of it?
It's a great question. That's probably the biggest one. And I guess it depends on the timeline around that. I've read a number of different reports that say, okay, go back to the beginning of this year, might be a 2-month, maybe 3-month, a quarter or two. And then I'm reading other reports that says quite literally, FY or 2022, and may even extend into 2023. The good news is that, the number one producer or let's say consumer with regards to chips is smartphone manufacturers. And we've had that big spike with regards to working from home. I think that subsided, and now we've got in queue, the automotive industry, for example. So I believe we'll get back to some state of normalcy, but it's gonna be a tricky situation, and I think we just have to kind of wait. It will come to be, but ultimately in the end, more capacity is required from a fabrication perspective.
So let's now talk about the sector here. We've seen this technology grow in the last 50 years, and I want to talk about opportunities for those that are interested in getting into the field. And Minister Ng, maybe I'll start with you. Are any words you have for people that are in attendance? We have a sold out conference for people who want to get into this space, given what you've spoken about, the government's interest in investments, resiliency, and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love this question because I think that this is really about possibilities and where those opportunities might be. And I would like to say that in some respects, I take no credit for this. I actually think that the terrific people like the leadership in Melissa and at Venture Lab, and the great entrepreneurs and the innovators that have essentially been at our door to say, look, we really are looking to grow, and there is a need here. And in the York region, there's a real opportunity. We tout ourselves as having terrific multinationals, particularly in the ICT space, along with an entire value chain and supply chain that supplies into that in small and medium-sized businesses. We are a highly skilled, talented, educated workforce that is also, here, I would say in the region, but indeed all across Canada. So this is what we are very interested in nurturing and in supporting. Job creation is job creation in this sector, where our companies are growing and scaling with, as global companies right from the get-go, anchored in Canada, but supplying to the world and partnering around the world is what we're very keen to collaborate on. As the International Trade Minister, I often tout that Canada is the only G7 country that has a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. We have access to about almost 70% of the world's economy through our many free trade agreements. So multilateral ones like the ones we have, the one Canada has with the European Union, or of course here in North America with the United States and Mexico, but also the CPTPP with the Pacific countries, and this is about market access. This is about and market access, but it also means collaboration, terrific collaborations between Canadian companies and those elsewhere in an effort to grow and scale our domestic capability here. So I think it is this effort to grow, and this effort to grow and to grow into the global marketplace. And in doing so, creating those partnerships that ultimately, I hope, will also add to not only the innovation, but also to the supply. I certainly spend a lot of time with my colleagues from around the world, promoting Canadian innovation and Canadian entrepreneurship and business growth, and in all of those sectors. And I think Kevin said right, which is that that it's very hard to see which sector industry you're in where you're not affected by semiconductors or by hardware, whether it's in in agriculture or in infrastructure, or the ones that are clear to us, like in technology, but the opportunity that belies us to collaborate and to grow our Canadian enterprises and to have them be out there in the global marketplace is very, very exciting to do.
Thank you, Minister. Kevin, Jamie, you both have, without me saying anything about how long you've been in the industry, you've revealed that, talking about your Commodores, but you have years of experience in this industry. What do you think the opportunities are for those interested in getting into the field now? Well, Jamie, I'll start with you.
Perfect. Yeah, the opportunities, I think, are, and Minister Ng, I think, really nailed it with regards to thinking differently, and I'd put it into a word: creativity. And you go back to the heyday with regards to Nortel and Research in Motion, now BlackBerry, where they really transformed and created new industries. And I look at that as being the most exciting and biggest opportunity for people now today. It's looking at some obvious big trends that are happening with regards to AI, AR, augmented reality, getting into machine learning, Internet of Things, IoT. And what that is really doing is completely transforming the way that we work and we live as a society. And so that is, I think, the big opportunity today. There's opportunities with regards to fabrication processes. How can you automate? How can you go through a changeover? I mean, Kevin was talking about some of the challenges with regards to, this chip shortage. And one of them is the fact that it takes months and, maybe even years in order to switch from doing one type of chip and semiconductor to another. There's big opportunities in there because there's a need that isn't going to go away. The demand is going to grow. There's new chips requirements for those industries like AI and IoT. And so there's new opportunities, you know, across all sectors: design, fab, manufacturing, distribution. And I would love to see Canada, as Minister Ng also said, move. You know, it's great that we're a natural resource focused economy, but to move into, you know, being a technology leader, I think that would be exceptional. I'm very, very passionate about the people that we have on this phone and the opportunity for them to really be creative and be disruptive.
Kevin?
Yeah, so I think if you're thinking of getting in this area, you know, as a young person, I think the opportunities are quite amazing. You know, we've seen the industry change radically in 30 years. 30 years that I've been in it, and I expect there to be continued innovation. You know, as Jamie said, there's lots of new problems that are need to be tackled, and there's a lot of opportunity to solve those problems and to put them to use for the benefit of the consumer. One thing that I think has been, at least to me, quite amazing is over the preceding 30 years, when I started, I went to the University of Toronto for engineering, and I was surprised to learn that they had a co-op program. And what I've seen over the last 30 years is the universities and colleges have really you know, recognize that there's, you know, change underway, and have done a really good job at, and not just you know, for those, you know, well-established schools to maintain their preeminence, you know, here in Canada and around the world, but to continue to modify and innovate on their programs. And then you've seen other universities and colleges, you know, recognize that they want to do something different and put in place you know, new programs for young people, you know, so that they can enter this field or this industry. And as Jamie said, you know, there's a lot of different segments that you know, those students or young people can apply their skills. And I have to say, in my time here, I'm consistently amazed at how, you know, the enthusiasm, the level of skill, and the level of innovation that these folks bring, you know, to the industry. And so I think, you know, continuing to see those universities develop these, you know, these great, you know, computer scientists and engineers, you know, so that we can develop the industry here in Canada. You know, I think you know, there's a great opportunity there, and you know, for the individual, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to, you know, go to established companies, go to some of the startups, you know, or start up something themselves. You know, perhaps taking advantage of the, you know, Hardware Catalyst initiative that Venture Lab has.
Thank you. Thank you. Minister, I'm just going to give you, if you can just take a minute. I think we have so many entrepreneurs that are dialed into this conversation. Could you take 30 seconds, just talk about the optimism and the possibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. I am very excited about this, and it's terrific to hear both Kevin and Jamie be optimistic about this as well, whether it's developing that pipeline of young people and the talent and the skills, and just Canada really being a leader in on this front. And I agree completely. I mean, Canada has a legacy of innovation, and bringing that and bringing this forward so that we are the very best, and that we are doing so in the global community. As I said, helping businesses and entrepreneurs, startups scale up and access new markets is something that I do every day. And we do this in partnership with others, like here at Venture Lab, with the companies that are here. That's exactly what the Supercluster Initiative is about. Across the country, we have them in different, you know, in different sectors, but it is these very partnerships that's going to bring, I think, real solutions to the world, and innovating and letting those ideas come in and capitalizing those opportunities. So there's a space for young people. There's a space for, you know, there's a space for entrepreneurs that are women entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs. Canada is very committed in this growth, and that growth being an inclusive growth, so that we really are yielding benefits to everyone in our society.
Thank you, Minister. We'll be taking questions from the audience shortly. So if you have a question, type it into the chat box, and we ask that media outlets indicate your network and name when asking questions. So while we wait for those questions, I do want to get your thoughts, our panelists, about the future. So very quickly, we call it 5 ideas in 5 minutes. Very quickly, I'm going to ask each of you, what are you most excited about in the sector? Minister, I'll start with you.
I'm just simply excited about the opportunities that belie Canada. We can do it. And guess what? With us together, we are going to do it.
Kevin?
I'm excited about the innovation. It's innovation across not just the technologies and in the different areas of technologies, but in the business models that we've seen, in the identification of new problems, and how the folks have grasped onto these issues and really innovated across the board, including, as I mentioned earlier, the universities and colleges. So I like to see the innovation, and I think there's lots of innovation ahead of us.
Jamie.
It's tough to follow both those, because I absolutely agree.
Yes.
Quite literally, I really would love to see nothing more, and we've got the support from the federal government, from the provincial, from the municipalities, to really look at what is possible. And it's no longer doing things the way that we've always become accustomed to do it, but we can start thinking about things differently and disrupting, a number of different industries. And it's no longer just focused on one, has been said. It's just leveraging technology to make society better on whole.
Wonderful, thank you. We have some questions from the audience. So anyone who wants to jump in, I won't direct it because I know that you probably all will have something to say here. We'll start with a question from Christopher Herbert, which, if I read correctly, is from MI6. Are there plans to manufacture chips in Canada similar to plans to manufacture vaccines?
Is that a question for me?
Minister, if you want to take a stab at that.
Well, we certainly are working very hard to create made in Canada solutions, and I think the answer to that is, we certainly are here to support those industries that are going to be really important to to our economy and to our growth. So in that context, while it isn't a direct answer, I mean, I think the answer is that we absolutely will support companies that are looking to be doing that work here in Canada.
Jamie, Kevin.
Yeah, that was just going to add on to the challenges there in today's market. I mean, tens of, a $10 billion fabrication plant that has a lifespan of maybe 5 years involves massive investments. And of course, today, with regards to the semiconductor fabrication perspective, it's a very high volume, low margin business. Again, just having that support, but to look at it in a different lens and, figure what can we do in Canada to help support the industry? How can we maybe look at different ways of solving those problems, different materials, focus on different chipsets, all those other things would be fantastic, because we know there's going to be an evolution. But there's always a challenge to move into that today. But I think it's that innovative mindset, that creativity that could really differentiate Canada moving forward.
Kevin?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, getting a product to market requires, a lot of different segments. And, there's been a lot of development and investment in Canada in various segments, whether it be on the EDA tools, that Jamie's company provides, or the fabless semiconductor, companies like AMD and others. So I think it's a question of, where we wish to invest in, and what portions of the entire life cycle of a product makes sense for us.
Now, the next question is from Michael Legoff at NRC. Legoff, I hope I've pronounced that right. This is very specific to strains between China and the US. What about the strains between China and the US when it comes to restrictions?
I've read lots about that. Sorry, I'll jump in only because I understand the geopolitical challenges there.
Yeah.
I understand that China's looking to be a world-leading semiconductor manufacturer, for complex semiconductors by 2030. One of the, what we keep on hearing is the fact that, we've got, as Kevin said, there's a lot of designers, like AMD and a bunch of others who need fabrication elsewhere. And China usually fills that void, but the challenge is if they are looking to take that over from a design and fabrication perspective, handing over IP presents a lot of risks. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests itself. And there's still a lot of dancing going on. I do see, potentially a lot of that fabrication coming back into North America. So I don't know how that's going to play out. I'll leave that to the politicians who are professionals, but it'll be very interesting to see how that shakes out.
Well, I think the other thing too is that globally there's so many places that are trying to do things, right? When it comes to technology, both, I mean, you see that in software, you certainly see that in hardware. So I think actually, the question that I would like to ask then is you've talked about how, Jamie, you've talked about how hard it is perhaps to get manufacturing done here. Talk to me about, just very quickly, can you give us a lay of the state of the semiconductor and hardware ecosystem in Canada, just high level?
It's a big question. I may defer to Kevin, who's probably deeper in that component. We service, from a software perspective, AMD and a bunch of other, Celestica and a lot of large organizations that design the chips. So from a software perspective, we look at it in that lens. But from a complete supply chain integration, I think Kevin might be better suited.
Kevin?
Yeah, so I think the opportunity in Canada is that there's fantastic talent here. We certainly have grown our footprint, here in Ontario and in Alberta. We have 2 design centers. The quality of the folks is excellent. They're experienced. They're able to tackle the toughest problems and succeed on the global stage. So I don't think from that perspective there is anything hampering the continued growth in Canada, the semiconductor industry.
Well, it's interesting because someone in our audience has actually asked the question that I was just going to get to with that answer. Gayatri Singh of CMC Microsystems says, if Canada were to be recognized as a key player in the hardware supply chain, and we've talked about this sort of global, lack of a better term, battle, where do you think we would be able to contribute the most? And anyone here is willing to minister. I don't know if you'd like to weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, maybe the way that I'll answer it is really around, what we have been supporting as a federal government. We have, of course, invested in 5 superclusters around the country, digital that's anchored in BC, advanced manufacturing that is here in Ontario, proteins and agri-food in the prairies, oceans, and of course our strength in AI. So that is sort of like, sort of the macro opportunity where we really are building these clusters of both, deep excellence, but also growth opportunities and excellence for Canada's innovation to really develop here in Canada, anchored in Canada, that then for me as the International Trade Minister can create those access opportunities around the world for businesses to grow. And in the hardware space, I mean, this is exactly why the government of Canada has invested $10 million in the hardware catalyst initiative here, anchored in Venture Lab. This is sort of the beginning of an ecosystem where it will work with other partners around the country. I know that Melissa and others here at Venture Lab have created a semiconductor council to bring together the industry leaders, is exactly to sort of examine and look at where the opportunities are here in Canada. So as a government, what we're of course, interested in is making sure that we are supporting that very innovation and entrepreneurial and business growth throughout the country. We're interested in job creation, and we're interested in job creation for those jobs of the future. And all of this sort of does indeed connect. And one of the things that I hear often about from our emerging businesses, and particularly those in leading innovative sectors, it's the ability to get access to capital. So the federal government, for example, launched the Venture Capital Catalyst Initiative. It's another $450 million that we just put out in the last budget that the Deputy Prime Minister released just a couple of months ago. This is in addition to the 700, some million dollars that we have done this, which is to create the conditions to enable that private sector capital to be raised so that we can invest in that capital will get directed into these innovative companies. And for me, as the trade minister, I mean, we have lined up all of what I call the Team Canada trade toolkit. So Business Development Canada, Export Development Canada, the Canadian Commercial Corporation, Invest in Canada, the Trade Commissioner Service, which is Canada's best sales and business development team all around the world, so that we really are enabling and supporting this very innovative and business growth of our very best potential in Canada, and we are very double down on scaling up Canadian companies to make sure that they are growing and continue to grow, so that we can have that kind of job creation that we all aspire, that we're all working for in Canadian communities and in our economy.
Thank you, Minister. Kevin, I'll start with you. Jamie, then very quickly to you. Where do you think Canada would be able to contribute the most, again, in being recognized as a key player in the hardware supply chain? Kevin?
I think, the first thing to do is to identify, what we have, on the ground today, to assess that, and then to look at, where the puck might be heading, and not where it is, right now, in the global supply chain. And at that point, I think there's an opportunity to figure out where the puck is going, to invest, for private companies to invest, and for entrepreneurs to invest in those new growth areas. So I think it's I don't think you can identify one particular segment without identifying exactly where we are. So I think the first part of that is identifying where we are and where we think things might be heading before we should consider where future investments might lie.
I like that, painting the accurate picture of now, seeing where the trends are going, and then trying to fill in those gaps in between. Jamie?
Yeah, absolutely agree with Kevin. And I love the Wayne Gretzky quote, go to where the puck's going, not where it is. But, and that really is it. I mean, we're looking at a massive disruption transformation in a number of industries that Canada and Ontario specifically has been very strong in, like automotive. And, we can see already the big, move from internal combustion engine to electric vehicles, and then autonomous, and then getting into a whole bunch of different, safety applications. And so I think where we can contribute is looking at where we're successful today and what we can do to innovate and supply and support those industries that we're already in, and then start looking where we could branch out and from a position of some knowledge and strength, and look at those other industries and other areas like IIoT, internet, the industrial Internet of Things, along with Internet of Things, along with AI and ML and all the other components that will go into it and continue to grow and expand. But I think there's huge opportunity there today.
Well, thank you. This, as usual, I get to these things and I have sort of 10 more questions in my head, but we have run out of time. I just want to say that if anyone out there still has questions or interesting thoughts that they want to get to the minister, you can. Her office is always very receiving of such calls. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can find Jamie and Kevin on LinkedIn as well. I want to thank all of you, Minister Ng, Kevin, Jamie, for your insights and thoughts. So delighted to have been part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's terrific to be on the panel with you, Kevin and Jamie. And Manjula, thank you for taking us through this really great and cool conversation. And you're right. I feel like we could do this for much, much longer than the time that's been allotted. But maybe
always the
we'll
case.
follow up in another way. I want to continue picking your brains.
We'll have to convince Venture Lab to throw another one of these things very soon. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break and then stay on for the breakout sessions on the intersection of hardware in healthcare, autonomous vehicles, and agri-tech. I hope you enjoy your breakout sessions and break, and come back. I'll see you back here at 12:55 for another exciting panel discussion on inspiring the next generation of tech titans.
To run a growing business is to be on a journey. And along the ride, you'll have many questions, challenges, and a few surprises. But wherever you are on your journey, your Dell Technologies advisor is here for you with the right tech solutions, so you can stop at nothing for your customers.
This is going to be amazing. So sing, dance. Oh, it's what you do to me.
Just before you take it too far,
Just know that I stay insane. I'm never When you see my face, up it gives you hell, up it gives you hell.
I want you and your beautiful soul.
I'm talking to y'all through a computer.
The incomparable W. Kamau Bell.
Nobody's mind is changed in one conversation.
That's the moral of the story, babe.
Self-driving cars, machines that learn, lightning-fast communication across the datasphere. These breakthroughs are ushering in the era of smart everything, where devices are getting smarter and everything is connected. It's all powered by silicon and software. From the chip to the cloud, Synopsys technology is at the heart of innovations that are changing the way people work and play. We help you meet new requirements for power, reliability, mobility, and security that are the foundation for smart everything. Usher in a new era of chips and software and bring smart everything to life with Synopsys.
The Hardware Catalyst Initiative is Canada's first silicon incubator and lab focused on accelerating the growth of hardware and silicon-focused companies to grow and scale in Canada.
Venture Lab Hardware Catalyst Initiative is a non-profit initiative, but we're very much about creating very profitable companies in the region and generating an ecosystem where we're a magnet for companies interested in setting up hardware companies to get established in this region.